This is Ministry Eviction gameplay. This is a game that I played just earlier today against Stella, Comit then to the Flames, who has made his name Russian, you can see in the chat, and Bruh. So, good players all around. We will hopefully see a map glimpse soon to see the spawns. As it stands, I'm just doing the normal first hex economy, using a laser drill on coal to power my first 2 silicon because I want to save plenty of coal for 2 steams, a differential generator, so pyrotype for a differential generator, and also a steam generator. Looking for which hex to take. That hex has more water and more coal, so I decided to take that one, and they're in much more advantageous spots. Setting up the thorium here. Not actually building the drill because I don't have any silicon, so I'm going to have to take it out of these mono factories. And then building metaglass, some sand into it, and connecting it to the core. So that's pretty much everything before air blast tech that I need to be making. However, I am going to forget to make... Oh no, I need to make graphite. I forgot graphite. I'm going to end up messing up the steam right about now, so I'm not going to build any steam. Completely forgotten the steam generator that you need to power the air blast in the silicon factory here. So I'm going to end up out of power for a while. And I'm setting it up, seeming ever hopeful that it will run, but don't have any power. And now I'm going to start setting up a differential generator. So I've fully forgotten to set up steam generator to power the air blast and the silicon. I messed that up as well. One of those drills is on copper, not on titanium. And now my power's out, and I'm going to be confused as to why. I'm going to turn that off, and there we are. Now I'm going back and building the steam generator, but I don't have any coal next to it, so I'm going to have to wire this all the way around. And so that's going to take a long time to turn on, so it's more likely that I'm going to have to wait for this differential generator to be fixed before I can put... Okay, never mind. I'm trying to turn it back on already because I haven't noticed that the differential generator is broken. And now I'm calling time and moving into my second hex. This is already 30 seconds slower, but I don't actually have any power. But I don't know that. So I'm just going to continue building other stuff. Building a titanium and graphite air blasts. The purpose of those, the titanium air blast comes in slightly later because I need more graphite to be banked for the polys. Otherwise it'll end up running me dry much too quickly. And I like having graphite. Most players barely make any graphite because they don't ever make any water extractors. Personally, I like having the ability to place water extractors if necessary. Because it means that if I do end up with the hex that say doesn't have any water, it's not that big of a deal. So you can see from the map here, Commit is to my right, Commit it to the Flames is to my right. Stella is all the way down the bottom, and Bruh is about halfway down the bottom. So I'm going to mess around placing the silicon for a little bit. There we are. And putting up the air blast for that. So I've fixed the differential generator and everything by this point. And so now I'm just going to finish that off, and now I'm moving on to my next hex. Or at least I should be. No, I'm going to try and find the oil that I saw earlier and then realize that I can't do anything with it. And so I'm going to use this one over here, this patch. And so I'm building plastanium. Don't have any water nearby, so I'm going to make a water extractor. That's why having graphite is nice. And then I know that I'm about to be out of, or should be out of power right about now. So I'm going to go back and build more differential power. I'm going to build some defenses on this core. Very light defenses. And there's the surge. So the reason I'm making surge and plastanium so early is that I'm going to be creating an overdrive dome. And that overdrive dome is going to go onto that hex up. The one I'm in right now. One I just moved into. The purpose of that overdrive dome is to obviously overdrive everything, and once it is on, it should boost my economy by a massive amount. There's the meta glass, just building that because, you know, meta's a good thing to have. And then differential generators, but yeah, the overdrive dome makes a lot of economy when you build it so early. When you go for an early overdrive dome, the amount of economy that you get from it is absurd. There's nothing really... Well, if you build really early plast and then make crucibles really fast and make phase overdrives for them, then it might be somewhat near the speed. But it's also a lot less dense, and you don't get everything else. It's a really unbalanced economy with crucibles, because you only get silicon. You don't get graphite and metaglass and titanium, all of that stuff. You only get silicon. So here realistically, I should have already gotten the dome up. I have the resources for it, and I'm freaking out a little bit. I have the resources for it, but I didn't build the phase. I built an extra graphite thing instead, which was a mistake. I should have gone down and built the phase instead, and then built the graphite afterwards. But oh well. Now I'm going to finish the phase off, and I'm immediately going to run up and build the dome. So the dome's coming in at about 7.5 minutes. Actually, probably more like 8 minutes. I didn't do a slash time, I don't think. So it's quite bad, but it's very good compared to what the rest of the server can do. I do a lot more dome rushing than the rest of the server does, and I'm considerably faster and get more under it normally. Most of the server they just make a lot more of these, like they make a lot of these silicon schematics, or they tech into crucibles, but not doing a crucible rush per se. And that's just, it's just slower if you're not, it's just slower in total, but in 1v1s and stuff, it's generally seen as better to do more just low tech, because with low tech you can build units, or you have options. You can build units, and you also get a more smooth economy increase instead of like quite low economy and then suddenly super high. So it's about the distribution of when you get your economy, rather than the speed at which you get any of it. But in free-for-all, you just want to play as greedy as you possibly can, because you're not looking to... Like, if you have a greedy strategy that flops as soon as you get attacked, great. If you don't get attacked, you've won, and there's enough people in the game that they'll probably end up fighting each other. So we're at 9.5 minutes, and I'm probably just about to be building my first silicon schematic. Yep, silicon, graphite, and flare. So that schematic makes, if you don't count the flare that's taking out, it's making about 1.5 crucibles worth of silicon. But I'm going to be using the flares to expand a lot. And you'll see that I'm going to end up expanding a lot faster than anyone else in this game. And so I don't want to place a defense schematic over that titanium patch. So I'm going to build swarmers, a little swarmer knife instead. realistically, I probably should have had everything else rearranged before this point, but it doesn't really matter so much. And then here, I'm just gonna run through, and now that's a big phase factory down. So that's sort of the point now where I'm well and truly into mid game, and I'm gonna place down 2 more of these. So that's 3 domed crucibles that I have right now, and we're about 11 minutes in. I think. Might be less. Actually, it's probably more like 10 and a half. But I also don't actually have them running yet. So, we've got to wait for more copper and lead. I'm going to put my polys on mine, and that's going to start making me more copper and lead. And you'll see I now have 3 domed flare factories. So I'm going to be able to use those flares to expand very quickly from this point on. So checking the map, Commit's expanding but not so much building into the space. So as it stands, I'm quite a bit ahead of the rest of the server at this point, or the rest of the game at this point, the rest of the people in the game. That's not even going to work. I don't know why I did that. That's just going to fill up with sand, that bridge. And I'm going to spam force fields everywhere to make sure that nothing can get flared. And now I'm going to find a good hex, and I'm going to build megas and polys. So the reason that I build polys with my megas is because normally I end up massively overbuilding the 4.5 monos that I start with. And when I build 2 megas, it's still nowhere near enough. So I always end up building 2 mega, 2 poly. I actually only started doing it recently, but the server was kind of broken for a while, and so I wasn't getting any silicon. I was getting like a third of the silicon that I should have been. It was unfortunate. But now I'm going to put up the power for this, and I'm out of thorium and copper and lead. So I'm out of copper and lead, and I have 4 or something. I think it's 4. Right? Yeah. I have 4.5 mono factories total going. So you can see why I need the polys. And this is the bit where I'm supposed to have plenty of copper and lead. So approaching 13 minutes, I think. I think that's right. Could be wrong. The time on the recording might be a bit off, but I think it's fairly right. So I'm going to take this core, and the only reason that I did that was because I don't want him to have that space. I want to have as much space as possible and then lock him off. So you can see right now what I'm going to immediately go and do is I'm going to go and build a few arcs to deal with the daggers, and I'm going to fly around the daggers so that I don't end up killing my player unit, and then I'm going to build a fort. Like that. And so now that fort's down, it is basically signaling to Commit that he's not going to fight me at any point. I'm just going to make a wall there, and I'm going to ignore him until I can kill him. Or he can break through my forts. But the point of the fort is just to keep this as a static border, because I don't want to fight him. And the fort will also, at the same time, going over there and spending the time to build that, I've banked up nearly 10,000 silicon at this point. So I could be putting down Self-Eco Zenith, but I decide that I would be better off building more surge and stuff and just building more forts. I really would like to have a wall of forts around there, right about this point. I want to start having fort walls going up. If I end up getting those forts down too late, people have access to my economy, and it becomes much, much harder to defend everything. And you don't ever want to be fighting anyone if you can help it when you're in free-for-alls. If you can ever help it, you shouldn't fight people. It will pretty much always be harmful for you. So power is very negative, just disconnecting that to give myself some. And I'm going to build, so I finished off that differential generator, and I'm going to build another one, and I'm going to reconnect the hex there. So I have forgotten to build metaglass. So I'm on less than 1,000 metaglass, but 10,000 silicon. Very bad economy. Very, very bad, just in general. Big mistake. But what's going to happen now is I'm going to build like 3 or 4 factories, I think. Now things are already starting to lag out because there's so many different players. The game's going to get very, very laggy. But yeah, so right about here, I should have taken that purple hex, because it would have meant that I can keep commit inside of 3 hexes or 4 hexes or something, and that's pretty much game over for him. But I chose to take a round instead, which was a mistake. Still building metaglass, letting thorium and titanium bank up a bit. Thorium is a pain to make in late game. My general play, like what I normally do, is I make sure that nothing unloads thorium, so I don't build any thorium reactors. I just use as little thorium as I possibly can. And then by doing that, I can just, like, once I've gotten into late game, I can go for a long time without ever having to build any thorium. Normally the entire game, but I do have to build phase at some points. When I want to start building tier 5, for example, I just build off-core phase schematics. So yeah, now he's put a fort on that core, and I can't take it and keep him locked out. And now it's starting to lag. So we're going to put down another fort here. And this is just to make sure that he cannot get out. So right about now, this is the point where he won't really be able to do anything. Or do anything to me. So he can't attack me anymore, because I've got the forts up. So I'm pretty safe from this direction. I could have built Zenith a long time ago, but I'm not in any rush. Could have built the 3 times thing a long time ago, but I'm not in any rush. And looking at it, everyone else is significantly behind me. So I'm just going to continue building my forts and then try to avoid fighting anyone. And you can see I'm already sort of starting to get the border of where my land is going to be, where the land that I own is. It's pretty much that diagonal wall and then a straight line. Checking power, 13,000, going to build impacts. I built the impacts here because I want to have impacts like running before I hit 0 power, because if I hit 0 power if I hit 0 power and then I try to build impacts, it doesn't turn on properly, or really at all. So I try to build the impacts there first, and then I'm going to afterwards go and build. I'm trying to build a plastanium schematic, because I see that I'm on less than 1,000 plastanium, and I want to be placing down a lot of forts, but then I just decide, you know what, it's probably smart if I make a few Zenith now, just start banking them up. And yeah, so this is the schematic that I use for Zenith. It basically just does everything. Like, it makes all of the economy for it. It only costs power to run. Well, it costs power and mineable resources. But power also only costs mineable resources, so I can just put it down and just hang it off the core, and the only thing that's taking is things that my megas and polys and monos are mining. So I don't have to worry about it at all. And you can see I've got my land pretty much all, like, I own it, but I haven't yet got forts down on the bottom there. But Stella and Bra seem preoccupied with whatever they're doing, so I'm not overly concerned about really anything that they're doing. Start trying to build a metaglass schematic there, realise that it's gonna, if I ever want to upgrade that fort, the metaglass will be in the way. So I just ignore it and go on and build another Zenith factory. Oh, maybe I don't. Right, I don't, because that's a core that I probably want to have a fort in. And I very nearly I see that core is really exposed from the back, so I'm just rallying a couple of units so that I can try to take it. I should have banked up a couple more flares or something, or maybe perform the attack a bit better, but I very nearly get it and then the megas come in. So I just have a few Zenith. The Zenith that I have right now, they're not really so much to actually deal damage with. I'm going to go for opportunistic attacks if they come, but they're not specifically to attack people with. I don't know why Commit's making so many flares. It seems like a bit of a misplay, considering that I've got forts there that will just shred them. There's nothing, those flares will not do anything getting into those forts. And now I'm going to build Plastanium and Silicon. The point of the Plastanium is obviously I'm out of Plastanium. I want a lot more, so I can build a lot of forts. But the Silicon, I'm seeing it was on 14,000 a couple minutes ago, and now it's only on 6,000. So I don't want to let that do anything. So I'm going to get flares and stuff coming over there. He took 2 cores, but he's not going to be able to hold them. So now that I'm seeing him starting to starting to try and break out of his space, his little closed-in space there, I'm going to start by building a fort on one of the cores, I think. No, I'm going to build more phase, because I see it going down. I'm going to build more phase, but then I'm probably going to start building a fort down there. Yep, I choose to build this one. I could have gone with something bigger, but I also didn't want to commit too much to building forts. I just want to basically say, you're not breaking out. I don't really want to be building something too big there. And I killed my power. So, I think it was the Plastanium and the Silicon that caused that, almost certainly. But now I'm going to run around and try and figure out how to restart my power grid. So the first thing that I'm going to do, whenever you run out of power, whenever I run out of power, there's always a couple of things I do. First thing that I do is blew my power, but I'm a long way ahead. So I just disconnect my starting hexes and those turn back on themselves, because they've got steam generators in there and that'll kickstart the power fine. And then I'm going to start reconnecting my differential generators. That's the next step. And then coming over here and building a Titan drill for some reason. I don't know why. I've got 12,000. Then I'm going to reconnect the other differential generator, and now it's time to start trying to kick on some of the impacts again. Yep. So I've disconnected the Zenith and the Surge. Yep. And now I'm just going to try to start up the impacts. 10,000 power, so that'll start up, and then I'm just going to build impacts here, and now I've got plenty of power to run everything in my base. So that's a crisis averted. And now I've got 43 Zenith, and I'm looking at Commit and thinking, he's doing the best out of everyone else. What can I attack? What can I try and blow up? And I go for this hex, because the hex above I could take, but it's not particularly high level economy. But this one I can take as well. I wouldn't have been able to, I don't think, if he moved his megas and microed his megas over the core. But I could take it, and it had a lot more in it. It was a lot more valuable to take. So now I've got plenty of power. Zenith are back on. Gonna go over and restart the Fort and the Plastanium and the Silicon and the Zenith. So Bri is now realizing he's gotten completely closed in by everyone else, by Stella on the bottom and me on the top. And so here, I'm going to go up, and I'm building more phase. At this point, I want to be building a lot of phase. I'm at about 800. I'm building a lot of phase because I want to start making Corvus. The Corvus with the walls up is incredibly strong because it's like you've got the walls up, so you're pretty much impossible to crack. But you're also putting a timer on the game that once I've banked up Corvus, the game's over. So Commit did /die and then left. A bit premature, but okay. So I'm gonna continue waiting for phase. I'm gonna build a fort here. I'm gonna continue waiting for phase. He's taken that core. I want that core. You're not having it. Yep. I was fully prepared to use my entire Zenith army to take that back if I needed to. Because that is where I want my forts, and you will not take my forts. You will not take my ability to build my forts away from me. Whenever I fly over that specific hex, because it's got so many polys and megas in it, my game's going to lag like crazy. So now I'm building down another fort. This one's considerably stronger than the one I have on the right, but I'm not going to bother upgrading the one that I have on the right because I don't really need to. These forts are actually more so intended that if Stella tries to... if Stella gets through bruh, I don't want any Zenith army that he banks up, or has banked up, or whatever to attack me. What I haven't realised by this point is that Stella hasn't made any Zenith. So now I'm gonna... I wanted to build a fort there, but then I realised, hang on, I should probably be making Corvus. Because if I have Corvus, my power... Like, if I have Corvus already starting to build, it'll make everything much easier when I try to build the forts. I'll already have Corvuses up very soon after. So I'll already be having Corvus rolling in. And because no one's really threatening me at this point, it's not so hard. I've made a lot of borders now with a lot of people, but everyone's been too far behind to be able to attack me before I get forts up. And no one's made any units at this point. That's just kind of a thing with dome rushing. You're gonna be, if you're allowed to get through mid-game, you're probably gonna be winning. But with FFA, it's very, very hard to realistically stop you from getting through mid-game. Because doing so harms your own economy a lot as well. So now I have 7,000 Plastanium. That's nice. That's very nice amounts of plast. Bra is complaining that Stella isn't attacking me. He doesn't have a border with me, and also any attack that he does would just land on these forts. And those forts, even if I didn't notice, and you just straight up didn't attack, I think it takes like 300 to 400 Zenith to break into. So you're not gonna have that. And if I do notice, then I can just sort of put some Zenith on top and bring my megas and stuff, and they're pretty much uncrackable by anything but absurd amounts of tier 4 and Corvus. They're pretty much the only things that can break in. Probably, I think from memory, tier 4 you need... I think tier 4 it's less cost effective to break into these forts than if you were try to use tier 5. But I think tier 4 are possible to use. It's just that you need to use like 40 or 50 of them. But even if that is the case, then I can just run down and place plaster walls or copper walls or whatever, and it just still is incredibly hard. So now I'm taking all of this land that Commit left me, and I'm tearing down my forts because I want the space. Um, so this wall is... It's just pointless. The wall here is pointless now because Commit's left the game and has slash died. So I'm not even going to bother considering leaving these up. I'm just going to tear them all down and use the space for other things. If it got to this sort of point and I didn't have Commit dead, I would probably at this point go back and make sure that all of the spots that I've used are really high quality economy. And then other than that, I would tear down my starting Dome Rush hexes. There's actually a hex there that I haven't even taken. That's funny. But yeah, I would probably go down and tear up my starting Dome Rush hexes. I shouldn't be building two impacts on the same core. I don't think I do, but I might. I think here what I do is I just put down the impacts. I put down a fort. I've got 1.9 thousand silicon. Right, I'm putting down 2,000 now, phase. And now I'm putting down graphite. Because I see that graphite number has gone down. I think it was even in 20,000s at some point. But now it's all the way back down to there. And so I'm just going to put that down. That's under the overdrive dome from the fort. That's all I need to do. Do I build 2 impacts on this core? I do. Alright. That's almost certainly a misplay. Actually, it's probably not. It's probably a very good idea because that's a core that's a long way away from my opponents. So now I'm noticing it would be nice if I could get into these hexes here, and there's the lag. It would be nice if I could get into those hexes and build a fort wall right around the start there, what's it called? It would be nice if I could get like a wall right around on the other side of that empty, the hexes that are just void, that you can't build in. It would be good to have a wall in there so that they're both locked in, like they would be locked together in a quarter of the map, and I would have 3 quarters to do my economy or something. And that would be devastating for them. But then I scroll over Stella's base and I realise he doesn't actually have any Zenith. So as soon as that happens, I just sort of say, okay, I'm going to take my Zenith around, and I'm going to take my flares, I'm going to take some space, just take a couple of cores here to get like an island that I can put all of my Zenith onto without attrition damage. And then I'm just going to sort of blow through half their base. And there's going to be pretty much 0 pushback because what can you do? Really? You have no Zenith army, you've been building Atraxes the entire time, but since you don't have an actual border with me, it just doesn't make much, like, you can't really do anything. So it's like, seeing the Zenith blob is already just saying GG. And yeah, that's fair enough. I'm just going to take this core. I know that the other one's going to take because I put an absurd amount of Zeniths into it. And then I'm going to take this core down here and I'm going to send half of them over to take that core as well. So I've just taken 4 big cores of Stellars. And yeah, I've got a second Corvus factory up and everything. And there's nothing that they can really do to attack me because of the walls that you set up. Kind of the big idea of free-for-all is complaining about Corvus. The big idea of free-for-all is that you never want to fight anyone if you can avoid it, because doing so will always just slow you down. It might kill them, but it'll slow you down as well. So I'm just going to continue building a bit more economy, and then about now I'm going to it's pretty much just clean up phase now. Bra is much too far behind to be able to do a lot. So I'm going to go for this core. I'm going to get it because he didn't micro any of his zeniths in time. I'm then going to go back here and apparently do more economy instead of continuing pushing, but whatever. Building more impacts. Okay, that works. So build more impacts. I've got pretty much infinite of every resource. I don't know why I have coal in the core. I shouldn't have, so I should unload that and dump it out into a incinerator. Don't like my cores having coal or sand. Coal especially because it sets the cores on fire if you have like this tiniest amount. So I prefer not to have any of it. If I'm not using any of it, why would I have any of it? It just lets my cores burn. And I don't like that. I don't see any reason to have sand and coal in the core. It just, in my mind, it just costs more unloaders and like it isn't actually really any faster. There's not really any benefit. The only benefit that I can think of is that you get to put all of your expensive buildings right next to the core, and that makes them easy to defend. But like, if you're doing doming, you're trying to fill up the entire space anyway, so there's not really any issue with like needing to put everything closer to the core, put the expensive things closer to the core, because you're just putting everything in the spot anyway. You're always going to have expensive things away from the core. I'm going to blow up this core on accident and kill half of that Zenith blob. But yeah, I just don't see any real reason to put sand and coal in the core when you have no need to. So now it's pretty much over. I'm just going to build an Atrax factory that I made recently. It's kind of a concept thing. I don't think it is actually very strong. It might be strong in fort war. If you're trying to break a fort, it might be okay, but you just don't have enough space normally to bank up the amount of Atraxes that you need. And any time other than that, they're just not mobile enough, and you can just like build one big fort, and the Atraxes are completely worthless. They do have potential though. If your opponent doesn't really know how to defend against them, then they're very strong. If your opponent isn't aware of the issue is that they can be picked on by any air unit and they can't fight back. So you can just sort of there's no way to use them to defend, which makes them very bad. Like maybe they're slightly better aggressively, but there's no way to use them to defend at all. So it's just kind of pointless. You do get a lot of them though, and they're quite cheap. So the Corvuses aren't getting through that, and I'm just like, okay, I'll just make some Horizons. Because there's no shields up there. I placed big power nodes, and then I realised that I'm an idiot, and big power nodes are terrible and should never be used. They're just more expensive, and they don't do anything beneficial. Compared to small power nodes. I just don't see why you would ever want to use them. I mean, on mobile, it kind of makes sense because it's a lot less APM intensive. But I don't really care. I sometimes use surge towers because I don't want to mess around trying to wire around different hexes. I connect two different hexes using surge towers. Or my forts. I always connect my forts using surge towers. No matter what, I use surge towers. Trying to use anything else, it's just too vulnerable, and you can end up getting the power nodes blown out, and that's the game.